welcome to our second show of the week, which is going to be kind of like a superhero-centered show for a reason. We're going to be reviewing Ant-Man, which came out this past weekend.
We can't avoid the superheroes.
No, we can't. This is like...
It's awesome.
I watch more than superhero movies, but yes,
he watches
I grew up
80s action flicks. We know this. So there's a
range.
He's got range, damn it.
No, my gosh. All right,
that's
but
good
yes,
range, though.
That's good range. But I have range.
You're
Right?
like, I don't need
an explosion in my movie. But if I'm making it, I want an explosion in my movie.
You're just doing research for your own work.
Guillermo del Toro won't make a movie without a monster. I won't make a movie without an explosion.
It's worked well for him, so you might as well have a shtick.
Yeah, fire everywhere. All right, but no, like,
boom goes the
a kind of quick thing of what we're going to be doing today is we're going to run down some quick superhero news. Mm-hmm. We're going to review Ant-Man, everything, including the post-credit scene.
I'm excited. So yeah, be careful. Spoiler alert!
Yes, full spoilers, and then we're going to do a quick retro reel to kind of tie in all the themes that are going on.
So excited!
All right, but first, let's go after our really quick rundown of superhero news.
Yes.
All right, it's just a couple, but the first one has been making a lot of noise on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, Entertainment Weekly came out and released photos of X-Men Apocalypse on set, and there's been a lot of hate going on out there because one, people are hating on the look of the Oscar Isaac character Apocalypse, and not only that, they're also hating on the look of Olivia Munn's Psylocke. Basically, if you haven't seen them already, go Google them. Mm-hmm. Check out our page because it's on our page too. Olivia Munn's basically wearing just like straps of leather, and by straps of leather I mean like there's probably 1 or 2, 3 straps. Like if you're familiar with the character Psylocke, she barely wears anything. And
so it's true to the character.
It's true to the character, which is surprising.
Aside from all the negative comments about it.
But it's like that's funny that you say that because Psylocke, it looks exactly like the character from the page. Mm-hmm. When you look at Oscar Isaac, the complaint is that he looks nothing like the character. So as a person that doesn't read, that's not familiar with the comic books or anything like that, when you saw the photos, what were your first thoughts?
My first thoughts were, I think these are somewhat promotional photos, which I feel like you have to take with a little bit of a grain of salt because they are similar to the Deadpool photos that were released. It may not be a true test of what the cinematography is going to look like ultimately. So what it looks like on film
That's important to note, guys.
It is important because it might... The tone of the film might dictate how you feel about the way something looks. If you see like a behind-the-scenes featurette, you're like, oh, that kind of looks fake. But when it's translated on film, there's something real and gritty about it. And it may be digital, whatever. Like, I'm just, for the sake of argument, film. Yeah. If taking that into account, my first reaction was that Apocalypse looks like the bad guy from Power Rangers, which apparently was a very popular opinion.
Everybody thought that. And he does the thing. He
does. So you can't discredit it just because it's incredibly popular opinion. It's super true. Like, he genuinely looks like a Power Rangers villain. Yeah. My 90s self is okay with that, but it seems disingenuous to the character of Apocalypse, who I've been told is an incredibly intense character. Yeah,
so I'll get into it in a moment, but I wanted to also get your take on Psylocke, Olivia Munn's character. Like, there's been a lot of heat going towards that because it's incredibly, I guess, it's demeaning to women. It's like, really, she's gonna fight like that?
But at the same time, like, okay, Black Widow's in skin-tight leather all the time. Like, just because you're wearing something doesn't mean you're not revealing things. Or just because you're not wearing something doesn't mean it's not proving a point to the character. Like you've told me, it's very true to what she looks like in the books, in the comic book. So why should they worry about if it's offending people's, I don't know, what's the word, politically correct tendencies, I guess?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
You know, I think there's an automatic response to everything, just be like, outraged! Yeah. Outraged! Oh my god, we see her thighs! Outraged! Yeah. If she's fine wearing it, and it's true to the character, and they translate it well into the story, and it's not just gratuitous shots of her body, I think it's perfectly okay. Yeah. But I'd like to know why she looks like she's in an 80s workout video.
This is the thing. And I completely understand where people come from because people made the same arguments when they look at a comic book and they see Psylocke and they're like, dude, what the holy crap, like who fights like that? You gotta understand she's a ninja, and this is the thing, like mobility. This movie, and mobility obviously, but the one thing that needs to be pointed out here is that understand for those of you that don't know the time period the movie is being made. It's set in the 80s, early 80s, by that.
Hugely important.
And it's hugely important because let's go back to the previous X-Men film that was also directed by Bryan Singer. Yep. When you look at the Quicksilver character played by Evan Peters, when you look at him, they kind of morphed what the character looked like in the comic books. He looked like some, like, this techno punk kid. You're like, what is this garbage?
Right,
what the hell? But then when you watch the film and you see the setting,
it totally works.
It totally works. It makes sense. Like a kid his age would be wearing something like that. You could imagine that.
Absolutely.
Psylocke in the 80s, obviously we don't know the iteration that they're going to be putting on screen. She may look like that like a total stripper, but the story may actually be different from in the comics, because Bryan Singer has been pretty loose with the adapting from what the comics storyline is to what's actually on screen.
But he has been giving very strong female characters.
He has.
So I feel like I can trust him for the most part.
The one thing is he's really good at, and just a really quick to point out is he's really careful, not careful, but he's more, and this is what Marvel Studios doesn't do. He is more interested in adapting the right character, or not the character in the right role for the story, not the other way around. Where like, what's the character gonna do
when this happens?
It's like, what would Iron Man do? He needs to have like a. He has to have his moment here. No. Like, just because somebody is named Rogue, for instance, like a lot of people were critical of how Rogue was used, but if you take the name Rogue away from that character, that role fits the story that they're trying to move along.
Right.
Psylocke, we don't know what she's gonna do yet. Let's hold on. Now, as far as Apocalypse, now this is a bit like, for me, this is really important because Apocalypse is my favorite Marvel villain that there is. He's a really cool character.
I'm sure he's the favorite of a lot of people. There's a lot of contention.
He has a bunch of abilities, telekinesis and all, like he's able to kind of manipulate matter, and he's able to also like change his size. He could grow to be 100 feet tall and all this stuff, and then kind of morph back into this normal human-sized body and whatnot. He has metallic armor.
To see if they translate that.
That's the thing. I would love to see that, and I hope they do that. But the biggest complaint was when they saw him, he looks. People were saying, "Oh, he looks like a weird alien." Well, he actually is. He actually came across aliens in the comic books, so that's a stupid argument right there. Two, they're like,
didn't read far enough in the book.
Well, like the one thing that people are really hating on is the opposition of Psylocke. It looks like nothing like in the comic books. I'll say this: just relax. Like you said, like you could look at a set photo and say, "Oh my gosh, he doesn't look like him." Wait till you see him in the frame that they were choosing to shoot him. Oscar Isaac, who plays him, knows the comic books, read the comic books.
And he's an incredibly intense actor.
He's an intense actor.
He's not going to let that make
and
him
he
distract.
has gone on record and said, he's like, look, there's things that will translate from a comic book page to the screen, and some things that are not. Like a dude that's, like for instance, like if Thor in the comic books is over 800 pounds, imagine if they had a CGI Thor that's 800 pounds. It would look stupid. It would look like something out of the movie Brave.
I feel like they're only willing to do that with the Hulk, because there has
the
to be
Hulk
a drastic difference.
It has to be a drastic difference for everybody else. But it's like, you know what? Thor doesn't have to be 800 pounds. He could just look really, really strong.
Yeah.
Let's just make it work. Apocalypse, we don't know what he's going to do yet. Let's be patient. But there are things that wouldn't translate from a comic book page to the visual screen. So that's all I have to touch on that. Relax. Keep it in your pants.
Calm down.
But the next bit of news that we're going to talk about is Guillermo del Toro. For those of you who have been paying attention to him over the last, I want to say, couple of years, he has been developing a script called, oh my goodness, Justice League Dark. Justice League Dark, and for those of you who don't know, that includes characters like John Constantine, Swamp Thing, all these really dark characters, and coincidentally, they kind of sound like Hellboyish kind of themes and whatnot, but he really wanted to make this movie. He wrote the script, turned it into Warner Brothers. They loved it. They were like, hey, we'd really, do you want to do this? And he's like, and then he had to sit back and think. And recently he came and ended up turning it down and ended up leaving. And recently he finally came out and said why he did that. He is actually turning it down because he'd rather do Pacific Rim 2. Now, a lot of people don't like that because they're like, Pacific Rim wasn't all that great of a movie. It was a hit overseas in Japan, and it was in Asia. I'm not going to just say, because I don't know what country it was.
That's true.
But it was a huge hit in Asia, and they loved it because it's pretty much a live-action anime. But it was interesting, and I think it was something that we should something we should talk about because he chose to ditch something that was quote-unquote original, something different that he hasn't done, instead of doing, but instead chose to do something that wasn't necessarily great, but wants to keep going anyway in Pacific Rim. And like, based just on that part of the news, like, what do you think about that?
I think that's, on its face, is especially in the direction that these films are going, it could be a mistake down the line when you look at it. I personally, I feel like I'm in the minority. I liked Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would hinge the next 4 or 5 years of my career on the sequels of it. I thought as a standalone movie it was fun.
Yeah.
A little forgettable, I guess, but a lot of big blockbuster movies have that problem. I personally, if I were in his position, I would probably have chosen Justice League Dark, because that would have been I think that would have been a fun challenge for him, but still sticking in his wheelhouse of kind of kooky ensemble characters.
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to like everybody, you know, obviously with his movie Crimson Peak and his past when he did Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
He loves monsters. He loves playing around with themes of horror, and that's really cool. I would have loved to have seen him because Swamp Thing is one of my favorite characters. So I was like, man, I would have loved to really see him do that. It sucks that he's not going to do it anymore.
The tone would have been so interesting to see.
It would have been cool to have him with the character like John Constantine too, where he's kind of like, it'd be really neat. But at the same time, the reason I ended up retracting my statement and thinking, you know what, go ahead, do Pacific Rim 2, is because Justice League Dark is pretty much just like the Hellboy universe. And I think that came into his thinking too. He's like, you know what, do I need to make pretty much like a DC version of Hellboy?
Or I could just,
No, and so it's like, yeah, you know, I respect that he's like, you know what, I'm just going to continue doing this one because it's new instead of doing something that's like what I did before.
Well, I think that's very, I don't know if we mentioned it, is that you said that the Pac Rim 2, if that's successful, that would breed potentially a Hellboy 3. Is that what I'm understanding?
Because like for recent years, like since ever since after he finished Hellboy 2, even though that was kind of like a medium hit movie, every Comic-Con after that, he's like, he always teases fans like, hey, do you guys want Hellboy 3? And everybody's like, yeah. And then Ron Perlman recently, you know, said, hey, you know, I would love to do.
He'd be interested
in doing it. I'm not getting any younger, so if we need to do it, it have to be soon.
There's a lot of prosthetics in there.
That's the thing. Like, but Rob Perlman's perfect for that. But like the one thing that, like, he's right. He came out and said, he's like, look, I would love to do a Hellboy 3, but to be honest with you, in order to get the funding for that, Pacific Rim 2 needs to be a hit. Yeah. And it's, you know, that's a big if, because the last one, it was a hit overseas, but it wasn't a hit here in the US.
It wasn't a smash. It made money, but it wasn't.
Yeah, so it's a big if to see where, that's an interesting way to go. I personally don't need a Hellboy 3. I'm not asking for one. I just like to see him do more things like Crimson Peak, but you know what? He's a big comic book fan. Let's see where he goes. If he's eventually meddles in later on, that'd be really cool.
I mean, we love most of the things he does, so. Yeah, all power to him.
Yeah, alright, so we're going to go ahead and get into the Ant-Man review now.
Let's do it.
Yeah, like, this is a heavy spoiler review, so if you haven't seen it, you know...
Pause, go see it, come back.
Yeah, and just, you know, get with it. But, like, alright, initial thoughts, really quick.
Initial thoughts.
Did you like it?
Yes, question mark? Yes, I did. Okay. I liked it. I did not love it. Far from it, but I liked it.
Oh yeah.
But my asterisks will come later in the discussion.
I thought it was an entertaining movie, and I know a lot of people are giving me crap because, you know, they see, like, they're like, well, Adrian, is it a good movie or is it a bad movie? I'm like, it's a hard one because I'm very biased when it comes to these kinds of films. I'm obviously, for our show, I'm the superhero aficionado.
That's very true.
But with Marvel Studios, I need to be really critical because, you know, like, we are going to touch on this because Marvel is starting to just hit through the cruise control when it comes with these kinds of movies. But like, overall, I dug it. It was fun. It was funny. Michael Pena was awesome. I wish that guy would get more work, but he was terrific.
He's so solid in everything.
T.I. was funny. I didn't know he could be funny.
T.I. almost stole some scenes.
He stole some scenes. He was good. He was funny. The Bag It Up. Bag it up. It was really funny. I thought, like, for me, visually, I thought there was some really neat stuff, like the scene that we see in the commercials as well, where you see the Yellow Jacket character beaming everything while Ant-Man's like in small mode and he's climbing towards him. That looks amazing. I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
The scenes of them shooting with him being really tiny were interesting. I wish if they had more time with one filmmaker that was developing it from the beginning and stayed with them, maybe they could have developed cooler ways. But it still looked cool. Like when they went, it seemed like they went really wide and small. It looked like CGI, so I'm like, yeah, you know, that's cool. I would have liked to have seen them kind of actually like take a chance and see if they could have shot it with live stuff. I look forward to the behind the scenes when this comes out.
Yeah.
But it looked all right. You know, it wasn't necessarily anything, you know, great, but all right. But like based off that, you know, it could have been. It could have been better. It could have been a lot better, and there was one reason it could have been a lot better. And this is something I want to ask you, and I ask everybody out there too. Do you like the movie in spite of it in spite of the studio, Marvel Studios, cutting off Edgar Wright, based off what you saw, like, and the fact that you're like, yeah, it was fun. Do you like it, even though they like? Do you think it could have been better if he was stayed on?
This movie would have been exponentially better if Edgar Wright had stayed on.
Yeah.
I can't think of it in a vacuum because I knew going in that he had taken himself out of the project. If you watched it without knowing that, it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Knowing, I love Edgar Wright, one of my favorite directors.
He's one of the best out there.
He's incredible, and he has a very specific style, which I think scares Marvel.
Yeah.
I think he would have done so many different things with the best parts of this movie, and made the parts that didn't work, I feel a little bit more genuine.
Yeah.
And a little bit less forced than I think some of the dialogue was. That I just feel like this movie would have been taken to another level. It hints at it so many times, it makes it frustrating.
Yeah, and like the actual director of the, because I'll say this,
no disrespect to Peyton.
Yeah, if you have been following the news of Ant-Man since it's been in production for, it seems like years now.
Like 9
originally
years.
Edgar Wright pitched this to Marvel, and Marvel's like, all right, let's do it. They weren't planning on making this film. Edgar Wright came along around the time when, I wanted to say, like, after the second Iron Man came out.
He was in development for years.
He shot test footage for them. He's like, look, check this out. And that scene of him and that like climbing the gun, jumping over it, and then punching the security dude, that was the test footage. And that's the thing, like, that was just like him just messing around, and he was able to do something like that. Yeah. So that was like, he was like, hey, he had this idea. He was in years in development. But obviously, as the MCU came to be developed, Marvel was like, look, we like the way we're doing things. Let's rework your script. So Edgar Wright's like, okay, let's try to work around this. But then eventually they started gutting his script, and then eventually it got to a point where he couldn't take it anymore. He's like, look, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I came to pitch to you. And Marvel was like, well, that's too bad. Like, and then
we
obviously
overseeing control. Yeah.
So Edgar Wright had to part ways for those creative differences, and then eventually they went with Peyton Reed. Adam McKay rewrote it with Paul Rudd.
And you can feel where the differences are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Peyton Reed came out and said, like, obviously all of our favorite scenes, coincidentally, were scenes that Edgar Wright actually was the one that put together. The scene inside the briefcase, Peyton Reed, the director, said, oh, we kept that from Edgar Wright's script.
You can tell. I mean, it almost feels like the Shaun of the Dead sequence when they put Queen on. Like, the iPod starts playing a song, and if it were Edgar Wright, it would have been hysterical. Yeah. It was good. It did a good job.
And that
drives me nuts.
The train scene, the toy train scene. Guess what? Edgar Wright wrote that. Peyton Reed says, like, look, we kept that from the original script.
To have the cojones to put your third act in a child's bedroom.
Yeah.
That is so micro in such a macro universe. It's
pun intended. Yeah, that's the thing.
But that's a good point. Like, it's an example of the movie playing on itself.
And you could tell, obviously parts like that, like the quick heist parts where, like, they're mouthing over stuff with Michael Pena, where he's like telling the story. He's like, "Oh, I was talking to this girl, and then this girl."
His voice is like voicing over on other people.
That parts of that you could tell were from Edgar Wright as well. So, and like the rest of the movie was kind of, you could tell what was original and that Edgar Wright did, and then everything else that was really just quickly put together.
Yeah,
like the heist, like planning was so rushed, and it was just like, oh, okay, they planned a heist.
You almost have to just trust that, like, these disconnected things are. And I wanted the ants to play a bigger part. Like, they played parts and they like explained each one, but
like it was. I will say this: I did connect with the fact that they cared for the ants after a while. Like when they killed Anthony. Like, I was just like, oh,
you almost felt for it. Like,
and
then the wing just slowly falls to the ground.
But yeah, you could totally tell what was eventually going to be a really potentially different film, and then something that Marvel copy pasted from their regular format.
It's impossible not to see that.
Yeah, and speaking of copy pasting their regular format, the villain, Corey Stoll, amazing actor. But
he was so
what are your thoughts on is Marvel? Did they? I'll just preface it just to have a good, because I formed the question beautifully.
Of course.
All right, I will say, like, I'll ask: did Marvel finally have? Did they create a new villain that could stand with Loki, or are they continuing the bad trend of having crappy villains?
He was so much closer to Obadiah Stane, but not as good.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like he's the angry man in a suit, basically. Yeah. The angry, disgruntled employee in a suit. Yeah, we didn't,
and, I hate to reference Age of Ultron again, because I always dog on it. And I'll say this, we never know why, we visually, and we, from a story perspective, never really know why he's so angry. Not only angry, but murderously angry. Yeah. For both of them.
Yeah.
And
Because they expect us like to just be content with not caring to hear their backstory.
He's like, here's the bad guy. He's bald. It's like, no, like, because like for instance, like there was a scene in the movie where Hope Van Dyne, Evangeline Lilly's character, is talking with Corey Stoll, and Corey Stoll's starting to lose it, and she's like, wait, no, you've been exposed to the particles way too long. It's been messing with your head, and he kind of like flinches for a little bit to make it seem like he's been like. Maybe
affected
she's right.
By something?
And I was like, wait a second, when did that happen? He was never in the suit.
There was never a basis. Yeah, he was never in the suit. There was never any physical evidence of that happening, and there was never a mention to it in the previous hour and 20 minutes of the movie.
No.
That was so disjointed.
Because if it would have stayed with the fact that he was angry because he had there was a story with Hank Pym and him, because Corey Stoll's character was the protege of Hank Pym.
Yeah.
And he eventually started working in the same technology, the Pym particles, that eventually helped create Ant-Man's ability to kind of shrink and grow. He starts developing him, but Hank Pym's like, nah, man, I'm not going to help you with that. That's a mistake. I'm not going to help you with that. And that pisses Corey Stoll's character off, and kind of feels like the disgruntled son.
But we come in so late in that story arc. It's just like he's already too angry. It's like
I wish we do come in late to that, because like right away they hate each other from the beginning.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like they hadn't seen each other in years. It was just like a weird dynamic. Yeah. Like I don't know.
If they're gonna do that, stay consistent. Don't throw in the stupid particle thing. Like, just stay consistent. Yeah. Don't try to throw a bone in there saying, hey, you know, he's not his fault. He's crazy. It's like,
yeah, he could have just went off the rails on his own. They didn't need to. It made no sense.
All right, but that leads like speaking of that, like obviously, you know, as they're expecting their audience to forgive stuff.
Yep.
That Marvel's asked a lot for its audience, and this leads to my next question. You know, at this point, is the studio expecting us to forgive way too much with their movies?
The short answer is yes.
Yes.
The long answer is that I feel like it's not too late for them to learn their lesson before they lose the allegiance of, I would say, the more discerning fans.
You're looking at them.
Yeah, I think we're both in that realm at this point. Like, I think we're like one more movie away from being. Yeah. You know.
Because this is the thing, like, and I want to make this point just so you can finish yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Outside of like the phase, like obviously Marvel separates their movies in phases. Phase 1 was like up until Avengers. Phase 2 was everything up until now.
Right.
So this was the end of Phase 2. That being said, if you look at Phase 2, which is from Iron Man 3 all the way till now, you take out Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America: Civil War. I'm not Captain America: Civil War. Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, yeah.
You take out those two movies. There's a lot of in there. Like Age of Ultron to me was So, like, you have Iron Man 3. I liked it, but, Thor, Dark World,
That's one of those movies where, like, they actually gave Shane Black a lot of creative latitude, and it was like,
you couldn't do that for Edgar Wright?
But
like, come on!
He's going off the rails, but it's, like, too late, and they have, like, random scenes. Okay, so that brings up a good point. As a total Marvel Cinematic Universe, if this is Phase 2, do we treat it like the second movie in a trilogy, where there are faults, but it's bridging us to something better? Like, are we allowed to say it's been 5 years of and then it's like, okay, there's gonna be 5 years of awesome. Like, are we allowed to do that, or is that not?
In my opinion,
is that not fair to the audience?
It's not fair to the audience because it's basically you're building up, and building up for a build up, and then like eventually, like when is the payoff coming? Yeah, you could say Infinity War, you could say Civil War, but technically the build up was also for Age of Ultron. And that was to me, even though people enjoyed it and had fun.
That's what scares me. Yeah.
To me, it was a huge letdown.
That scares me toward the next phase. Is that they keep for them the momentum is worth more than the actual payoff.
Yeah, because in Phase 1, even though Captain America, the first Avenger, was an okay movie, it was fun. It was okay, and solid. Thor visually was good. Everything else kind of sucked about that movie. Everything was building up to Avengers, and then Avengers, there was the payoff. You're like, yes, but then with Phase 2. When is the payoff coming? Because it's like, Phase 2, we never.
It's not coming. If you weren't happy now, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, we never got that great moment where like, yes, we're like, this is what we were building up to, because like if you remember from like Iron Man 3 on to now, they were building up that there's stuff that we can't understand coming from the skies above us, and. When did we ever come back to that? Guardians of the Galaxy was its own thing. You can't really count it as part of this world. Yeah, it deals with Thanos, but they're dealing with their own stuff.
No, it's true. They hint at it in Iron Man 3 where, like, Tony Stark has, like, an existential crisis about it. But it's like, that just felt like it was a forced emotional pull for all the comedy that was sprinkled into that movie. So.
And when we get to Age of Ultron, they pretty much disregard that movie.
No, it's true.
Yeah, they pretty much ignore it because in Iron Man 3, they're like, oh, it's all good, I'm having trouble understanding all this stuff that's going on. And then we get to Age of Ultron, he's wearing suits again. He's not paranoid anymore until he sees the Vision.
As connected as the universe is, there is some disjointed inconsistency with some of the later few. And the one thing I have to say that I think I mentioned earlier in our like pre-production meetings is that I actually want to pose this as like a quick question to you.
Yeah.
Is you have a problem with the most recent 2 or 3 Marvel movies in Phase 2 specifically?
Yes.
Do you think that has something to do with the greater perspective of comic book movies and how we have something like Christopher Nolan's universe of Batman as sort of like a juxtaposition to the sort of fluffier Marvel universe? Like, do you almost need something like
contrast.
Do you need something darker to make you appreciate this kind of light and airiness that Marvel provides?
That's a good question. I yes and no. Yes, we need something to kind of go off that because we need a different tone in movie where you could have something like The Avengers, which was a great movie, all fluff, but it was a really fun, awesome, well done movie.
Came out the same summer as The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, and it was like you could have both of those two and have them exist, and you'd be like, yeah, I had fun watching both of them. Now, my biggest complaint is that they're not even trying to make something original. They're not making something that's very well done or executed. Yeah, Winter Soldier, terrific, really terrific. And they're trusting those filmmakers to go on and make the last 2 Infinity War movies, the last 2 Avengers movies. That's awesome. But you're kind of just, this entire phase 2 has been in cruise control. Thor: The Dark World.
I think everyone universally dislikes that movie.
Yeah, it was so poorly done. Like, you can't blame Alan Taylor, who directed, because he went on record saying Marvel started taking over everything that they were doing. And that's starting to become a theme here. Kevin Feige, who's the head of everything Marvel Studios, is pretty much the director of all this stuff that's going on.
At least in post, in terms of determining on the edit room floor what gets made.
And it's disappointing because at the end of the day, and what DC is eventually going to do is like they're trusting their filmmakers. Like, look, we have a universe, but make a good movie first.
Which also has its whole run of threats and problems that could occur.
That could happen, but like at least that's what they're going with.
They could have really good standalone movies that are disjointed within each other, but that's a risk you run, and it could be a good problem to have.
So I think that Marvel is asking us to forgive too much. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're going down a dangerous path, and I think eventually they have to. Obviously, they're very lucky Civil War's coming out. Because that was hinted at in the post-credit scene that we got.
Yes.
And that's kind of leads to my next question. The post-credit scene, for those of you who saw it, basically we find Winter Soldier kind of stuck in this weird metal contraption where you see his metal arm, and Captain America is there with Falcon, and they're trying to get him out, and they basically talk to each other saying, hey, should we call Tony Stark? And Captain America's like, no.
They didn't even say Tony Stark. They just said, like, should we call him? And he's like, he wouldn't understand. He wouldn't believe us anyway. And you're like, what's going on? Yeah,
they're like, no, he wouldn't understand because what people don't understand is that Winter Soldier killed Tony Stark's dad. Like, he assassinated him. And Tony Stark, I think, at that point and whatever, because that's from an actual scene from Civil War. That wasn't just shot as a post-credit scene. That was actually that was a part from the movie.
That's cool.
And basically what happens is, like, when he says no, like, we can't call Stark, he won't help us. Like, we're on our own now. And then Falcon says, I know a guy. And that's when you see Ant-Man will return. So basically they're going to call Ant-Man and maybe even Hank Pym and say, hey, help us get our buddy out of this thing. And at the same time, it's like, you want to join our version of the Avengers, our little mini crew, to fight against Tony Stark's crew.
And it's been building up to it, and it feels like there could be something to the Civil War movie that...
It's going to be really cool. And I'm really excited because prefacing like what we were talking about right now is, hey, we're the Russo brothers who directed Captain America: Winter Soldier. I'm like, they were picked to direct the last 2, the most important Avengers movies, and probably any Marvel movie, the 2 of the most important. I'm like, wait, it was a little quick. They just did one movie that was really good. I'm like, can we trust them? I saw that post-credit scene, that first shot of like how Sebastian Stan looked like he was just crossed over, and I'm just like, that's it, man.
You're in.
It was
a shot, and you were already invested.
They do, like, when you look at what they've done in the past, like they did You, Me, and Dupree. They did a bunch of like sitcom episodes and whatnot. They never did an action film. And then like sometimes as a director, like for instance, like when I was asked to cut features for the company that we work for, I wasn't happy doing it, but I knew it put food on the table. So yeah, I did it. But then like when I got onto the show that I'm working on now,
your passions were like
your passions are unleashed, and you put something on screen that you understand, and it's like holy crap, and you could see that with these guys. And it's really, really cool because...
Their other projects were just their day job. It was just building to stuff they were really passionate about.
Exactly. And they're knocking it out of the park. Like, I saw that one frame, and I was just like, man, dude, I was so wrong. Which is,
I feel like some of the post-sequences haven't done to that effect.
This is the best post-credit scene since Thor: The Dark World, where we get the Guardians of the Galaxy preview.
Yeah, because that's the only Marvel movie that I haven't seen all the way through. I couldn't sit through all of Thor 2, so it's like the one sequence I didn't see, but yeah.
It's I think Civil War is gonna be, and like Anthony Mackie said, like this is the next Avengers movie. It's basically Avengers 3.8. That's basically the way he said it. So it's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be fun to see that juxtaposed against Batman v Superman.
It is, because they're very similar themes, and I look forward to it. Like honestly, I think it's gonna be fun. I'm glad it's happening. Like we
can't avoid the comparison. It's gonna happen. So
whatever. Hopefully, both of them deliver.
Yeah,
I really.
That would be the best case scenario.
That's the best case scenario.
Just arguing how fantastic they both are.
Yeah, man. I can't wait, but it's gonna be real. But like the last question I'll ask about Ant-Man.
Yep.
Because Marvel has been on record saying, hey, this is us doing a heist movie. As a heist movie, did it work? Ant-Man.
I would say on its overall, no. Yeah. And the reason why is there are actually two small heists, or there's a small heist before the main heist.
Yeah.
And when that heist is more effective than the big third act heist, you've lost me. Yeah. Like when you're breaking into a house, and to me that has more humor and more ingenuity, just the way he was acting out certain scenes.
Yeah.
Versus the random vague, oh, you gotta do this or bad stuff will happen. Like I can't get behind that. It's too vague for me. But the fact that he needs to go break into a house that he thinks is just a rich guy to help put food on the table so he can see his daughter, I can believe that. Like, there's something tangible to that. The other side of it was just, overall, no.
No, as a heist movie, no, I agree. It didn't work. It was a sprint of a heist movie. When you watch the heist movie,
they really rushed,
and we're going to go into one that we really liked that was a comedic one, too, that was actually really well done. But a heist movie, you have to have build-up, and you obviously have the drama in the middle of like something going wrong.
Which they had.
They had, but it was such a sprint.
You felt it coming, and it was like, there was like, he was falling down a waterfall, and you can just see what's going to hit you. And then it hits you, and you're like, okay, that was... It was a fun movie, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're a comic book fan, go watch it. You'll kind of get, like, some subtle nods to their, like, the Ant-Man mythology with the microverse and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into that, because to me it doesn't really matter. No, but it's true to the character.
It's true to the character, and obviously the other post-credit scene was that we see Hope Van Dyne is going to be getting her own suit as the Wasp, and she kind of hints to what everybody has been asking for when it comes to a female superhero movie. Finally, as she words out. But this is the thing.
Finally, Black Widow gets one first, because I want to see a Black Widow feature.
It's not gonna happen.
But then she doesn't get one. That's my stance on it.
It's just and that's the thing. Like, there's no room for her in the slate. Like there's no Hope Van Dyne movie. Everything has already been laid out up until Infinity War. Like
if she ends up helping Ant-Man in Civil War, that'd be kind of cool. I don't mind.
I think they're gonna be together.
It'd be cool to be in the movie. I just don't think she should get a standalone right now.
With the slate they have right now, it's just. Yeah, it's too bad, because it's like, when you, like, for instance, like, we talk about, it's like, it's dangerous when you have the entire slate, because then you're going to get backlash, where it's like, hey, Black Widow's cool, make a movie with her. Like,
that's not part of our plan.
That's not part of our plan. It's like, well, you made some crappy movie, happened to be called Thor 2.
But that was part of your plan. Why couldn't you adapt something we're, like, kind of clamoring for?
Man. But no, but that'll wrap up our Ant-Man review. Overall, good or bad film?
Good film. There's just too many what-ifs for me that leave me wanting more.
It is a fun film, and this is the thing, like, when I grade Marvel movies, it's like, is it a good movie, and is it a good Marvel movie? Is it a good movie? Yeah, I guess it's fun.
Yeah,
but I'm very critical, because is it a good Marvel movie? No, because it's the exact same Marvel movie we've been getting.
It doesn't pass my would I buy it test.
Yeah, exactly.
But transitioning from the fact that this was a okay heist movie, we're going to talk about one that's a little bit more favorable in our eyes.
A little bit more. That's a really good heist movie. Are you kidding me?
It's funny because I'm going to keep you in suspense for just a second. This movie is not critically acclaimed by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But based on, I was even looking back at some like reviews from viewers. There are hundreds of reviews on IMDb like recent reviews of people saying like this movie's hilarious. I don't understand why people hate on this movie. It is the 1999 classic starring Martin Lawrence, Blue Streak.
Yeah, so that's our retro reel for today. Yeah, so we're keeping the heist theme going.
Yes.
And I, like, when we were talking about it, I was like, hey, you know, do we do, like, a superhero retro reel, or do we do, like, a heist retro reel? I'm like, look, there's really no, like...
No, like, shrinking movie
There's no real shrinking movie. Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like, yeah, it's a classic, but... You know,
everyone knew we'd go there.
Everybody knew we would go there. So it's like, let's do a heist movie. A way a heist movie should be done, and it's done in a comedic way that's like kind of different. It's really different, and Blue Streak is that one.
And I think it works well with Ant-Man because, like we said earlier, Ant-Man had 2 heists essentially.
Yeah.
This movie kind of does too. Like the first 10 minutes of the movie, setting up where he hides the diamond when he steals this diamond.
Yeah.
You guys have seen the movie. That is in itself sort of like a busted heist that goes wrong because he gets caught and goes to jail for 2 years. Then the rest of the movie is him performing an elaborate heist to get said diamond.
But
so
like
it's
the twist is so amazing because like he gets locked up, and then when he comes out, he's like, "Oh, I know where my diamond is." The problem is like that empty building that he leaves the diamond in ends up becoming a police station. It's just like, what are the chances? But you're like,
face is just
it's like you know it's in there, so it's like, oh god, okay, I have to go.
There's no way they check the duck, so clearly it's sitting there still.
So he poses as a cop, Malone, like the most cliche name ever.
Like Danny Glover would so.
Yeah, and just like he goes in there, and then like not only like poses as a cop and then like infiltrates, actually becomes indirectly a good cop.
Yeah,
and like he has this.
But it's so funny because he doesn't even necessarily like, he tries to pretend, but the things that he messes up, they look at him as like, God, he's got such unique methods. Like, they look at him like he's completely screwing up, and they're just like, he must be FBI. They're like, no, he's DEA. Like, they just completely go with it. It's
every little quip is amazing, and like, but there was like interesting things that they were hitting at. They were like, it's like, if you wanna, you gotta think like a crook is what they say, and it's like, oh man, that that's
he is one.
Yeah, because like he's helping train Owen Wilson's character, Luke Wilson. I'm sorry. And basically he's kind of like the guy who doesn't know anything. Everything was like textbook. So like he comes in there, he's like
so green. And
and you got like the very first like crime scene quote unquote that he goes to investigate was where he's like, hey, somebody robbed my warehouse. He's like, well, it took all like the rims away from my warehouse. He's like, yeah, but where did they come in through? Oh, they came in through the roof. It's like, those are too heavy to go through the roof. Why would you do that? It's too much trouble. And then he's like, he looks outside and he's like, wait a second, did you leave them in a truck? He's like, what? Then they go in the truck, they're all there. And he's just like, he's like, why? Like, what made you think that? He's like, because you're stupid. It's like,
it's like you're not thinking sense, like what a criminal would go through.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was really neat. And obviously, there's when he's like the hilarious part is when he tries to get the diamond while everybody's not looking.
Oh my god!
And it's so awesome.
The things he witnesses in the darkness, it's just ridiculous.
And then the sting operation is really cool. And
Dave Chappelle's amazing.
Dave Chappelle makes a cameo. This is before he became Dave Chappelle.
No, this was like Eddie Murphy in the Nutty Professor. Dave Chappelle, like he was still doing like his.
Yeah, he was just a stand-up guy.
Yeah, his little tiny parts that just they linger. They're so
like
good.
Martin Lawrence he carries the movie. He's he's actually a really good performer. Like if you watch movies like Life or like with him and Eddie Murphy, he's a terrific actor.
And he always plays one of a duo. Like he's always like him and another person.
This was like the one lead movie he's had,
but
he works against so many other people.
I think that's why it works so well.
And it's so well done. The heist. Just the dynamic, like, of being able to say, man, I robbed a thing, I left it in a building that eventually became a police station. I know I have to pose as a cop.
You can tell that was their sell when they were pitching the movie. They're like, alright, so this criminal, he gets the diamond, but here's the twist. And you're just like, yes, I don't care what happens.
It's original, and it kind of turns the heist movie on its head, because it's like, every little thing, the heist always changes. Like, alright, so...
He has to adapt to it,
So he finally gets the diamond, he's sitting on top of the drugs, someone calls it, leaves it in the drugs, like, oh god. He's like, oh, alright, we're taking the drugs away. He's like, wait,
what?
We could use it to get the really big fish. He's like, what are you talking about? A sting. Yeah, pow! A sting. And I'm like,
you can literally see his face figuring out what to say next. And they have no idea.
And that's terrific writing. Yeah. Like, that's just terrific writing. Because it's not just like, it's all just one heist. No, the heist has to evolve because there's so many things that are going on. And then, like, he has to continue adjusting to everybody saying, hey, man, we couldn't find your records. He's like, I'm internal affairs. This place is a cesspool. It's just like, oh my god.
I love how he's just like super violent sometimes. He just like beats the crap out of people in like the interrogation room.
He said, I can't read good. I'm like, oh, that was so great, man. But no, that was our retro reel. We recommend you guys go see that. You want to see a good heist movie that's fun,
it's an unorthodox
that's hilarious,
heist, for sure.
But also just at the end of the day, just a really good movie. Check out Blue Streak. It's available everywhere.
Any chance to get Martin Lawrence in the show? My mom loves him. I love him. Just
he's
Martin
terrific.
Lawrence is fantastic.
But no, that was our pretty much our Ant-Man review / superhero mini show.
Yep.
All right, so that's that'll be it for me. I'm Adrian Alderette.
And I'm JP Lee, and we'll see you when the credits roll.
Boom!
Can't help yourself.